This is the Jeff Lewis Trumpet Show with your host, Jeff Lewis, where we talk about music, jazz, and all things related to the trumpet.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Jeff Lewis Trumpet Podcast. I'm very excited today to welcome a great trumpet player and teacher, educator, and all-around good guy. And he's like, he's a trumpet player, man. I discovered James on YouTube years ago and through his website, Blackwell's Trumpet Basics. Right. So we're going to get into everything James has been up to and his education and his thoughts on this incredible beast called the trumpet. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce James Blackwell. James, thanks for coming on the podcast, man. I really apprciate it. I'm excited
That's
too.
A heck of an intro. I like that.
I actually practiced it, man. I wanted to get it right. I didn't want to do you any disservice. You have some Grammys.
Yeah. It's pretty hilarious because I'm trying to remember what one of them was a Bob Mintzer app we recorded.
Nice.
Yeah, it was originally an app, which is it's called the All LA Big Band.
Uh-huh.
Bob Mintzer All LA Big Band. Okay. And the app is one of these things where you can fade out the lead trumpet.
Those are great.
Yeah. So it's like you can fade out. I think there's 16 tracks, something like that you can fade out. First trumpet, second trumpet, and then rhythm section and all that stuff. So
now, were you playing lead on that?
No, Wayne Bergeron was playing lead.
Okay,
and I was playing second.
Okay,
so you can fade me out and play along with Wayne.
He's a pretty good lead player.
He's not bad.
He's not bad. And then you also did some work with Clare Fischer and Bob Mintzer, of course, and then the UNT 1 o'clock lab band, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then I also want to get into your time at UNT because I've had a handful of students go there and always have good things to say about University of North Texas. And then you got your master's at USC.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So let's just talk about the beginning and what got you into the trumpet and kind of like a little bit about your history.
Yeah. Well, I joined the band because my mom had read some article that if you play a musical instrument, it makes you smarter. So
yeah.
So she kind of required all of us to take 2 years of band. That was like our family requirement.
Right.
So I had originally, this was back when Bill Clinton was on TV playing the saxophone. So like, even though I was in the third grade or something, we all thought sax was like the coolest instrument because, the president was on TV playing it. So I originally was going to be a tenor sax player, and pretty much everybody at the school wanted to play tenor at that time. So you had to start on clarinet. So I was signed up to start as a clarinet player in the following year. And we ended up moving to a new school. And then I had this thing in my head, like, I don't know, for some reason I sort of like left the clarinet in the dust, and I went up to the band director and he asked me what I wanted to play. And I just said, what's that one with the 3 valves? I'll take that one. That looks good. So that was the start.
Was it one of those classic things? Well, give me the one with the 3 valves because it's gotta be easy, man.
Probably. I don't know. I didn't really think too hard about it.
Okay. I got you.
So after that, I did beginning band. And then when I was, I started in the 4th grade on the East Coast in Massachusetts. And by the time I was in 5th grade, I was doing jazz bands. And then that kind of like marked the beginning of everything for me as a trumpet player. From that point on, pretty much like playing in jazz band was my favorite thing to do. Mm-hmm. So I sort of just rolled with that. Then I moved to Texas when I was in high school. And I don't know if you know anything about Texas public music education, but it's like major.
Right.
Just in terms of, our band had like 300 and some people in it. We marched with 160 or 180 on the field. So just, humongous. So I was doing that, playing in the jazz band there as well. And I was kind of like that kid that couldn't do anything on the horn except play high Fs. Like I sat around one summer and just cranked until I sort of, figured it out and totally screwed up, my chops. But so that's when I became a lead player, a lead player. and playing in the jazz bands and playing in the football games and the stands and all that. So that was sort of the beginning of everything. And I had a really good trumpet teacher in high school, this guy named Matt Swihart, who I think he's up in Seattle now, a very good all-around trumpet player and orchestral guy. And he basically taught me for next to nothing money-wise, because at the time, both me and my two sisters were playing in band, and both of them played piano as well. So that's 5 private lessons, basically, that my parents were shelling out the dough for. So I was going to take every other week, and then he kind of made this deal with me where he goes, look, I'll charge you half, but we can't work on this region band music. I'm sick and tired of doing this crap.
He must have been a little bit older.
Yeah. So that was, so we got just some kind of trumpet range things and working on flexibility and that sort of thing. We had some fun. But that was the early stuff. I was never really what I would call like a serious student until I was 25 or so, when I really decided to give it a go. But it was mostly just playing in jazz bands and marching band and all that kind of stuff. But our lead band director, this guy named Jimmy Cook, he was a North Texas alum. So he was always encouraging me ever since, I was probably 15 years old. He always had us sight reading new music and playing a lot of Thad Jones and that type of thing. And he really encouraged me to head up to North Texas and study there, which I did. It was a 5-hour drive. So that was all the early stuff. And then, UNT was kind of when, I don't know, I sort of found myself, I guess you could say, in a way, or like the path that I wanted to take as a trumpet player.
Right. So you were playing lead in the 1 O'Clock band?
Yeah, I played in the 1 O'Clock band for 4 years, and the first 2 years I played second trumpet, and then the last 2 years I played first trumpet. So
you just right out of the gate, you were in the 1 O'Clock ensemble.
Well, I was on the extended undergrad program.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was there for 6 years, and I think that I spent the way they run the program is you have to re-audition every semester.
Oh, okay.
So you kind of have to like defend your chair in a sense.
Sure.
So when I started as a freshman, I was playing lead in the 7 o'clock, and then I played lead in the 4 o'clock for 2 semesters, and then lead in the 3-2, and then second trumpet in the 1. So I kind of moved my way up through the ranks over a couple of years.
I really like that system, because it's like baseball, single A, double A, triple A, pro, right? And then you can really assess. There's something to work towards,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's, and then, if you're not, maybe you're not shedding enough, or maybe you just don't want to do it anymore, then, maybe you should get into something else, or maybe you really find that music isn't your thing. I don't know. It's kind of a, I'm sure it was hopefully a friendly competition thing, but you still want to be in the 1 o'clock. I mean, everybody wants to be in the 1 o'clock, I assume, right?
Yeah. There was some competition. It was all pretty friendly, but still, like when you're younger, everyone's got a little bit more of an ego, I think.
Sure.
So, but for the most part, all of us were friends, but we were all still like trying to cut each other's throats, basically.
But you still had to stand next to each other, right? So it's an interesting
totally.
Situation.
Yeah, definitely keeps you on your toes for sure. But yeah, what you're saying, like one of the things that I had thought that I wanted to mention today was that I've always been a super goal-oriented kind of a guy, just in general, and musically. The thing that has always kept me on track was being goal-oriented in the sense of knowing what the next band that I wanted to play in would be.
Right. So you always see the next step, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's always going to be, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to eventually, my goal is to play in the 1 o'clock lab band, right?
Yeah, totally.
Now, who were you studying with at UNT?
So the first 2 years when you're there as an undergrad, you're required to take classical trumpet lessons from a graduate student.
From graduate student. Was Keith Johnson? Is that his?
Yeah, Keith Johnson was there. He was there. I think he was the head of the classical trumpet department.
Okay.
So there's two. Yeah, there's two different departments there. There's the jazz and the
Right.
legit department. Him and a guy named John Holt. So they were the two classical teachers. So I took 2 years with a couple of different grad students, and then after that, I studied with Jay Saunders for 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when did he leave UNT? He's no longer there, correct?
He retired. Oh gosh, I'm not even sure how long ago that was. Within the last 5 years,
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's what I thought. Okay. And then, so just out of curiosity, what kind of things were you working on with Jay because you were studying like lead trumpet playing mostly, right? I think. And then, so what kind of things did Jay have you do?
Well, we had to do. He had like his trumpet fundamentals pedagogy, which was basically he had a series of exercises that he had us do with a like a minimal pressure type of a system.
With the open hand holding with your lip.
So holding like the bell, and some basic lip slurs and tonguing and stuff like that. But his whole idea was that he wanted to get everyone accustomed with the feel of easy upper register trumpet playing. So it was very much like, it's funny. I just pulled out his notes recently and have been going back over them. And a lot of it has to do with this idea of, he called it climbing up on your bulldozer, getting on your bubble, taking a big breath, and then feeling the support of the breath here. And then just allowing the air to kind of come out. Like one of the visualizations he used was like having a pouring a bucket of water out. Like that's the air is just like the water coming out of the bucket. And every single note that comes out the end of your horn, you can play every single note with the air doing the same thing.
So let me see if I understand. So rather than forcing the air out, like you're really working hard, you take a big breath, and then the natural exhalation process is what helps you.
Yeah. So
more or less.
So it would be. I mean, my take on it was that it was just kind of like open breath. And then we would do like intervallic studies. Like one thing that we did, my favorite exercise at the time, I totally had forgotten about it until I pulled out the notes again, was just 1-5-1. Bo ba beep ba bo ba beep ba. And just learning how to make those adjustments in pitch without using the air or air kicks or anything like that.
I see. Yeah.
And just getting to where you could get up into the upper register and the the dynamics. When you're doing the exercise properly, the dynamics it gets softer as you go higher and louder as you go lower.
Right.
But you can still achieve any frequency with the same, basically, the same flow of air.
Right.
So I think that the main idea, what he was trying to kind of like knock into all of our heads, was that we didn't need to try so hard to play in the upper register.
Right.
So that was that kind of an exercise, and just like some easy lip slurs. But you're doing them with the minimal pressure and this feeling of just a consistent flow of air, essentially.
Right. So like we're using like the Charles Collin book, the lip flexibility book, or the Earl Irons book, or was it his own thing?
He had a stack of PDFs. It was a collection of different exercises that he liked. Like there was some kind of Schlossberg tonguing stuff.
Yeah.
And going up as high as you could do that comfortably. But yeah, the one that I found the most helpful was just the intervals, like the fourths and fifths, and just getting to where you could span 2 octaves without feeling like you were having to blow any harder to get the high notes out.
I see. Yeah. Those are. I mean, you're sitting in your practice. Those are really difficult to do efficiently and easily without cramming the horn in your face.
Totally.
And not, how, excuse me, students will do, and me too. You go up to the next note and you kind of hesitate before you pop up a fifth, where you either stop the air or you breath attack.
Yeah.
So you're technically not tonguing, but at the same time your airflow stops. So it's kind of like da. Da, is that da, right? There's not that, right? And and you kind of have to really let go of all the tension.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so hard to learn to do that. And it gets even more difficult when did you do a lot of octave slurs?
I don't remember doing too many octaves. Like the Schlossberg thing, there wasn't a whole lot of that. Just mostly kind of like the tonguing. Like, and I don't even know that that's where he got it from necessarily. But I've seen exercises that are like that, in that book. But one of the other main ideas was that when you're practicing, he was very much about getting us to become more feel oriented, to feel the machine of tone production, and to not worry about the notes that came out the end of the bell. Like, so if you went to go bo ba beep ba bo ba beep, but you went bo ba and none of the right notes came out. One of his sayings was, you still made it to first base as long as you're not cramming, you're not tightening the throat, you're not stopping the air. So as long as all the plumbing is doing what it's supposed to be doing, he wasn't too concerned with accuracy, especially in the beginning. It was very much just about discovering that feel of staying open, staying, generally relaxed, and then just allowing the accuracy to kind of come with practice.
Right. I like that. I like that analogy of first base, second base, third base, home run. Sometimes we don't even get to first base. first notes in the morning, 0. Just like, strikeout. The trumpet. I mean, that's what that's one of the most difficult things too, is like playing after, how it is, like you play really hard or you have a great day. Like I'm having a great trumpet day. So you practice a really long time and the next day you're shredded. Right. Yeah. And then you're like airball everything. So you don't even get to first base.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you received your master's at USC, right?
Yes, I did. If you don't mind, I'm gonna backtrack here a second.
Yeah, please.
The thing with Jay, that for me was the most influential wasn't even all the trumpet stuff so much as it was just the musical aspects of lead trumpet playing. So another humongous thing that we did was we would do lead trumpet takedowns, like actually transcribing lead trumpet parts. Because that was the other thing too, was this idea of the role of a lead trumpet player as a musical stylistic interpreter rather than a meathead.
Yes, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a big that was a huge influence on me, because up to that point, when I was in high school, I had listened to Maynard Ferguson and Stan Kenton and Dizzy Gillespie, and that was like it. That was the only kind of trumpet stuff I knew about. So when I got to UNT, that's where I was introduced to Al Porcino, Snooky Young, Conrad Gazzo, the Finleys, all these cats that had left really nice, tasty musical lead trumpet playing,
definitely
these recordings behind them. He introduced me to a lot of music, and for me, that was kind of the most fun part too, because I always felt that we had a similar taste in players and charts and music and stuff. So a lot of the lesson time was just sitting around listening to recordings together and, geeking out about the vibrato on this one dotted quarter note in the middle of a phrase, that kind of thing. So, I just wanted to, toss that in there.
Well, I think that's a good segue before we get maybe into USC to talk about your the Terry Gibbs lead trumpet book, which is a long time coming. I mean, like, I'm sure, first of all, it took forever. I mean, maybe there were transcriptions you did at school, but still, I have the book right here, if you don't mind me showing.
Yeah.
So I had some students get it as well, but this book is amazing. As you can see, the thickness in there. I mean, how many tunes are in here, James? Do you know offhand? And they're all lead trumpet
70.
part. Yeah, I mean that's amazing, because before, if you didn't transcribe them yourself, there was the Count Basie one, right? And then there's also the Thad Jones one.
Mel.
Yeah, Thad and Mel, right?
Yeah.
But now then you've come out with this book of 70 awesome lead trumpet parts that are really easy to read.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're like, you're on a gig.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So
this is
I have my
this is
friend
what you
Dave
would read.
Richards to thank for that. I did the original takedowns, and then he kind of like helped me.
Make them look pretty.
He does a lot of writing himself and has his own band. And he was like, "Yo, don't use dotted quarter rests and all this,
Right.
notation things and checking some errors and that sort of thing."
But this is so valuable, right? So I have my students, as I'm sure you do, is like I have all the albums downloaded, and then I just play along over and over. And I'm not a lead player, but I would, and it's funny being a second player. If a lead trumpet player hands me, "Hey, do you want to play lead?" my answer is, I'm happy to do it if you're tired or something, but it's not something I want to do.
Yeah.
Like, hey, if you're getting shredded, I'll do my best to help you out, but it's, I don't have to. Right. Whereas, I mean, I want to do more of that. So this book is great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can even treat it like a gig, like you just play tune after tune,
Yeah. Totally.
and then start building up your endurance.
Yeah.
And treating them, like as etudes, right? So you have little sections. It's like, okay, I'm really chowing on this section. I'm just going to slow it down, or maybe play it lower in a different key, or, change the articulation or something. And then listening to the recordings and trying to be Al Porcino. Exactly.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, you want to tell us a little bit about the birth of that book and your idea and how you use it with students?
Yeah, it's funny because every once in a while I get it. I think we're going to talk about the ear training stuff here in a little while, but probably about 10 years ago, I sat down and over the course of a year and a half, really got into relative pitch training with the piano. And then I wouldn't do any ear training for 2 years, and then I'd do it again for a while and kind of. So that project was just 2 years ago. I just sat down one day and just treated the whole thing as an ear training assignment for myself. And so I just sat down with the headphones and the pencil and paper, and I did it, just like you would do it in a dictation class. By the intervals. And it was something took me 70 hours because I'm like a geek. I track everything. So, I tracked how long it took. And I think I probably had some intention of releasing a book while I was doing it, but I was more kind of just doing it as like a mental exercise. But then going back through the albums and re-listening to them again, just reignited my love for those recordings. They're amazing. And having to listen to them so many times to get everything down.
Right.
It's pretty cool now because I can flip open to any page and just look at like a bar from one of the tunes and the whole song's like there, which is great. But in terms of using it, the way that I like to do it is to do what you're saying as like an etude, almost like excerpt work. I never practice excerpts or anything like that, but I assume this is how you do it. Just take like a little tiny 4 bars. And then just get it to where it's like exactly the way that Al played it, as close as you can.
Right.
And to record yourself doing it and to hear my vibrato is not quite the same as his, or my notes are a little bit choppier, they're not quite as connected, and just to hear the difference between the way that you're playing it and the way that it is on the recording, gives you massive style. It just gives you the confidence to show up and read a piece of music like you wrote it. That's how I think about it anyways.
Right. So the idea of recording yourself, I think, is huge, right? Because how it is, you're playing along with Al Porcino, right? And you're playing the lead trumpet, but really you're hearing him. You may have headphones on. Maybe you do this or something. And then you think you sound like Al Porcino, and then you listen back to the recording and it's just you, and it's like, I don't sound like Al Porcino, right? I sound like me just cacking through something, or maybe not to be too hard on myself, but it sounds okay, or it sounds horrible, or whatever. But actually, now that I think about it, it might be good to record yourself with the headphones on, playing with the track, but the recording just picks up you, so it's not You don't have Al bleeding in, the big band bleeding into your recording because you're still going to hear Al. You know what I mean? I just thought of that. That might be a good way to practice that. But what else did I want to get into? I know what it is. So I want to get into your ear training, and you actually have a course now, right?
Yeah.
Available, and it's available on your website, correct?
Yes, it's this kind of thing where I just open it. I'm not sure how frequently I'm going to open the course. Probably at this point, I'm thinking like every other month for a couple of days.
Okay.
And the reason I have like an enrollment window is because from launching a couple of different products on my site, I'll have it open for a week, and a couple of people sign up here and there, and then in like the last hour before it closes, that's when 50% or more of the people sign up.
Okay. Little marketing tip there.
Yeah, totally. That's a good marketing tip. But yeah, the tip was even if people want or need it, they won't get in on it if they think they can at any time.
At any time. Yeah. That's just a human condition, huh? Path of least resistance. It totally makes sense. Yeah. But the ear training, I think, is so valuable because trumpet players, we're like, playing the trumpet is like trying to hit a dartboard in the dark, blindfolded after somebody spun you around 10 times. Trying to hit that note square on because you can't see it. You have to feel it and you have to hear it. Yeah. So let's say you open up your book, the lead trumpet book, and it's like, I've never heard this tune ever, right? And there's all these intervals and notes, right? Mm-hmm. Well, what's going to help you to hear the note,
right?
And be able to play the note that you're hearing, hopefully, in your head. If you're not hearing any notes, then it's going to be that much more difficult.
Yeah.
To play those intervals.
Oh, yeah.
And to be able to sight read it, right?
Yeah.
It's like the old thing. I mean, I'm sure if you've experienced this, you have a brand new student, never played trumpet. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. A month goes by. The kid can play, maybe a whole C scale or something, whatever. Mm-hmm. And you give them something to sight read, something easy. He's a beginner, and they really struggle. But then you tell them to play Mary Had a Little Lamb, and they nail it. Mm-hmm. Why? Because it's in their ear.
Yeah.
They already know the song.
Yeah, exactly.
So it just proves how invaluable ear training is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Did you want to talk a little bit more about the ear training, what's in it, and how the process?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Like, ear training was always one of those things that I knew I should do and never did. Like everybody else. And I don't know if you've seen this guy's ads or not, but there's this cat, David Lucas Burge, who used to take out like these one-page ads in Downbeat magazine.
No.
He'd be like wearing a fedora, telling you could get perfect pitch.
Oh, yeah, of course. Like, yeah. I didn't know his name. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I had a copy of his course.
Uh-huh.
And it is thorough. It's like a ton of work, and it's very thorough. And I had a friend, the only person I ever met that actually took the course. And by the end of him doing this, he said he did it during the summers over when he was in high school. He would work on it over the summers. And by the time he had finished the course, he showed up to college and he was acing every oral skills test like it was 1 + 1, wondering like why nobody else could do it.
So it was really beneficial.
Yeah, totally. And like you could play like, 10 notes on the piano and he'd tell you what every single one of them was. That kind of thing.
Nice. Uh-huh.
So I went through and I was about 25, 26 years old, and I was going through an embouchure change, self-directed embouchure change. I didn't know what I was doing at all. So I just figured, well, I'll get into this ear training thing now because I know that'll make me a better player. Logically, like you're saying, the rationale behind it. So I got into doing it, and it was a weird thing because it was almost just like so much work to get through this guy's course that by the end of doing all the work, something happened to my brain. That's like the best way I know how to describe it.
Did it fry?
I convince people all the time. I'm like, you got to learn the intervals. Just trust me. You got to learn the intervals. And you can never explain this to people in a way where they'll actually sit down and do it. But because it's hard to describe the benefits of it. I just think that it makes you more talented. You know, you can look at a piece of music and know what it sounds like you're saying, and all these things. It just gels everything together. And all the time, like when trumpet players have trouble, like I think when a lot of the times when people have trouble warming up, or they're always searching for some like special little thing, so it's just right. You know, you can always just ask them, well, can you sing that note you're about to play? And most of the time, no. And I think that a lot of times when people have really good ears, they don't even worry about the trumpet stuff. It's more just like stick it on the face and sing along. You know what I'm saying? Sing the melody in your head.
Yeah, I think Chet, among many others, Chet Baker was one of those guys. I think he just sang and played and sang and played.
Yeah. In terms of the course, like what's in it, it's just the 12 intervals. And the way that you learn them is you first get familiar with the sound of the interval. Beep. So that's like a perfect fifth. So you learn what the sound of the interval is, and then you have to learn how to spell it, these musical spellings from each and every note. So an example of that would be a perfect fifth above C sharp is a G sharp and not an A flat, because it has to be a fifth, C, D, E, F, G. So that makes it a fifth rather than a sixth. So when you know all the possible spellings and you know the sound of each interval, that's when you can sight sing music. I don't think you have to practice sight reading that much, because if you can just know what it is and write it out, then you can sight read it. In my mind, anyways. So you get familiar with the sounds of them on the piano, and then there's testing that keeps you going to the next level. The whole thing is kind of like graded and step by step. So the first test for the perfect fifths, for example, is a spelling test. Spell a perfect fifth above this note, spell a perfect fifth below that note. And it's all timed. And then you have a singing test. So you'll do sing a perfect fifth above this note. Boom, happens on the piano. And then you have to sing the appropriate pitch and the appropriate note spelling. So that's how you become familiar with each of the intervals. And then as you become familiar with another interval, it's added into a speed recognition listening drills. So where the intervals are played like pop, like that quick, and then you have 2 seconds to answer before the next one comes at you. So you listen to these tapes. Basically, all you have to do is just listen to them over and over and over again, and everything happens automatically. But the challenge is doing that. Is being able to sit there and not know any of the answers and listen to this 8-minute long tape on repeat, you know.
This is at least, if not before, but a must-have if you're going into college music. I didn't start doing any of this until college, and then
same.
I was already behind the 8 ball after, you know. And we, you know, you probably had to play piano and sing pitches. We never did solfege for some reason, but I think they do now at school. But you know, regardless, it was just like, oh, this is new to me. Intervals, pitches. I have to look at 2 notes and be able to, you know what the interval is, let alone the pitch. Right. And then you have to do a dictation for the final, right? And they just play, and they give you the first pitch, and then and people who have never done it or really, really struggled. So,
totally.
I mean,
I don't think it's possible for most of, I mean, especially because if you're in college, you know, it's not like that's the only class you have to take.
Right.
And the other thing too is when I learned this stuff, finally learned it after graduate school.
Right.
The story I always tell is that it took me at least a month to be able to distinguish between a perfect fourth and a perfect fifth, like the difference between red and green, you know?
Right.
So if it takes a month for just to get the comparison of these 2 intervals and then some, because, you know, it keeps getting better and better over time, I don't see how you could possibly learn all 12 intervals plus, you know, 4 different versions of the triads plus harmonic movement and all in 16 weeks or whatever a semester is.
Right. It's really difficult. For piano players, it was always a little easier. Maybe guitar players, right? Chordal instruments had an easier time. Vocalists, in general, I think struggled the most. And then, of course, people with perfect pitch were like, bam, 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 bam. Like, this is so easy. Let's move on. Yeah. And then I was stuck in the middle somewhere, having never even, you know, studied any of it in high school at all, ever. I almost think a better way to do it would be in private lessons. Right.
You know, like by the time you graduate, then you have to be able to pass some type of oral skills exam. Because if you keep adding intervals before you learn the previous one, I feel like you're sunk.
Right.
If you move on too quickly.
Before you grab onto, yeah. So, and you said people can find this on your website, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's a courses tab at the top. I need to redo the website. There's some problems with it, but just in terms of navigating. But it's called Ear Training for Trumpeters.
Right. And it's Blackwell's trumpetbasics.com, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. I love the intro. First of all, when I saw one of your vlogs, man, I totally missed your vlogs. I know you have your 2 kids now, they're youngsters, and you have your hands full, but man, but could you please bring those back anytime? Because they were so hilarious. And you know, just the things you talked about and everything you were going through, was either going through or had gone through, and was maybe going to be going through. And it's like, I can relate to this guy. It's just, for those of you, a little bit some background on James. My name is James Blackwell, and I love trumpet playing. It's a problem, he says, and he reads in the beginning. But I mean, you really had me at the end here. Before exploring, no wait, it's not. The blog keeps it real and upbeat because, let's face it, learning to play the trumpet can really suck. I was like, oh man, yeah, so many things can go wrong. It's just, I knew at that point, it's like, okay, I like this guy. I know he's been through the ringer, and now he's trying to keep, you know, I mean, I'm quite a bit older than you, but I learned so much so late. Yeah. You know, where was all this great information when I was in high school? I mean, YouTube, you know, podcasts, people just know so much. The information is immediate. If I want something about the embouchure, I didn't know anything about the embouchure. I didn't know anything about the jaw. I didn't know I had a bottom jaw. I didn't realize it moved, right? I didn't know where my lips might, you know, want to be before I played the trumpet. I mean, my teachers never, ever, ever, ever discussed it. Mm-hmm. In fact, it was like taboo. Like, oh, no, you just, however you play is how you play. You don't want to mess with that. Yeah. Right. Yeah, and then, you know, I'm not a big proponent of that. If I see an issue in myself or a student, I'm readily willing to, let's work on adjusting something and trying not one thing, but multiple things. I feel like I get my lab coat on and I'm a doctor now. And it's like, well, let's try this. Let's try this. What if you put your horn in this position? What if you, let's put your jaw here. What if you do this with your lips, right? And then, yes, of course, air is involved. Yes, it's the most important thing. But what if your embouchure, what if you're just playing in the red completely and maybe way off to the side? You know, it's like, maybe that's part of your issue. So that being said, can we talk a little bit about, you had mentioned an embouchure change. Yeah. And like, how drastic was it? And you said it was self-diagnosed, maybe, and that you went full steam ahead on your own, which can be really frustrating, as you know. But here's I think that we really, really, really teach ourselves. Mm-hmm. Yes, we have great teachers. Maybe they lead us down the path to self-discovery, and I think those are the best teachers, right? Yeah. Try this, try this, try this. Let's try something new. This isn't working. And then you're always adapting and reevaluating and adjusting. So let's talk a little bit about this embouchure change. Yeah, cool. And first, just to kind of agree with you here on this embouchure thing, there's a book by golfer Ben Hogan. It's called like Five Lessons or something. Mm-hmm. He's one of these cats that always comes up when you read about performance psychology and practice and stuff, because he was a notorious practicer, you know. Right. But the first lesson of the book is how you hold your golf club. And that's like the first assignment is you read this super detailed thing this total pro wrote about how to hold a golf club. And then that's what you do is you go home and you practice holding the golf club. So I don't know why you wouldn't do that with a mouthpiece. Right.
You know? Yeah. So definitely. But yeah. So when I was in high school, basically what I did was I pretty much practiced nothing except lip trills above the staff.
Yeah.
And I did all sorts of weird stuff. Like I would stick my mouthpiece in the freezer because I found that if after I took the mouthpiece out of the freezer, I could play really high on it for like 5 minutes.
Dude, I love that. You're such a scientist. Like anything you can do to play higher. I mean, I could see the scientific mind working. I'm just going to figure it out, man. I love it.
Went down a lot of wrong alleys. I'll say. But the way that I kind of figured out how to play doing these lip trills was, first of all, I could only play on a totally bone dry embouchure. So I had no strength here at all.
Mm-hmm.
So any amount of slippage, and I just couldn't play.
Right.
The other thing I played really low on the top lip, and I kind of draw the lips open like that, and play on this sort of like squishy part. So using a lot of compression, I could just like laser beam G's and A's by the time I was in like 10th grade. But I had a lot of but I couldn't do anything else. And I had this other embouchure that was kind of like sort of a regular embouchure, but I could barely get out of the staff playing on that one. So the reason that I changed it was because a lot of the times my pitch was like not that good. I was playing sharp a lot. Mm-hmm. And also, it was just really uncomfortable. I was digging into the top lip, on the teeth here, and I would get bruised lip all the time. I could not play before like noon.
So when you say uncomfortable, it hurt. It hurt.
Yeah. It hurt.
Yeah. Okay. And when you're in 10th grade, I mean, you're still a kid, and you can take a lot of abuse. So if you're getting hurt, then you're definitely pressing a lot. Anyway.
Yeah. So I kind of kept playing like that because I was having success as a lead player. I don't know how, honestly. Like I listened back to some of the recordings. I'm like, that sounded pretty good, But when I remember how it felt to play, I always felt like I was faking it, kind of.
I understand the concept.
Yeah.
Yes, very well.
Yeah. So my first thing that I did was I just took it from a purely physical comfort point of view because I didn't want to quit playing, but I was like, this sucks. This isn't fun. It's uncomfortable. So I just decided, well, I'm going to put my lips together and I'm just going to move the mouthpiece up higher. And I'm going to try to play wet, on
that is you had a complete embouchure change. This is not an adjustment. This is like, let's start over. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So it was like in a day. I did it the day. I think it was like grad school graduation, and then the next day I was like, I'm never playing like that again.
Oh wait, so this isn't until grad school. It wasn't in high school.
It was after graduate school.
Oh man. Okay.
Yeah, because I knew I had problems, but I was too afraid to change it because.
Sure.
I didn't want to lose my stature. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you had to get through school, right? Yeah. I mean, you still had all, the auditions and the and the concerts and whatnot. Yeah.
So I did that, and it was about it was an instantaneous loss of over an octave of range.
Sure.
Which took about a year and a half to kind of sort of get back. Of course, I kept learning new things. It's been 10 years at this point, and it might sound silly to say, but just now am I beginning to feel like, okay, I think I know how I'm going to just like do this. From now on.
And and how old are you now, James?
35. I'll be 36 in a couple weeks.
So you were 25, and this is after, right? You just finished grad school, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just real quick, when I started messing around with my embouchure, I thought it was going to be 6 months, and I was going to be the baddest lead player that ever lived, and everything was going to be cool, and I could play like Maurice Andre. This is not the case. Yeah. I'm probably 3 or 4 years in, and I'm still, still working on it.
Yeah.
Right. It was so. It's like I could still play the old way and I can play the new way. It's just a matter of sometimes it feels really good and sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, I'm glad you said that. I feel better now because you said like after 10 years, it's finally starting to makes sense.
Yeah. Because like I said, I didn't know same as you. I didn't know anything about the embouchure. I had no direction about that. And I think just most people don't. A lot of people just learn how to play really well, and they never think about it. And that's that's it. And like and people, and also I did notice a lot, like especially when I was in high school, it like you say, it's taboo. You know what I mean? People were kind of freaked out, even if you mentioned it, because they were scared that talking about the way they played was going to screw their playing up, or they're going to think about it too much and paralysis by analysis or something like that.
Definitely. I think part of it is like, whenever you make a change, rarely is it ever immediately better. So you go, well, that's not right.
Yeah.
If I do that, well, that's not right. That sounds horrible. It feels horrible. It sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Rather than over the long run, it will be more efficient because you're using your airstream better, and then the core sound is better, and maybe the way it sits on your face. Like my issue was, I would just same thing. I'd press really hard. My top lip, it was just starting to hurt. Yeah. And then I started reading things about the bottom jaw, bringing the jaw forward and trying to even out the pressure from the top and the bottom, so that one is helping the other. Through the different registers. As I went higher, it was just, the drill was just press harder and harder. And then at what point do you stop playing higher? It's like,
right.
I can't press any harder. And then endurance goes out the window.
Yeah.
Right. And the only time I could play longer was when, like maybe the third set of a really hard gig, my lips were so trashed and swollen that I could barely feel them. And then I could get through the gig somehow. Right. Because they were just numb from pain.
Yeah, definitely.
You know that feeling?
Sure, yeah.
So, and when you went through the embouchure change, was it all, you just did it yourself? Did you have guidance, or you just reading and watching and asking?
I read as many books as I could, and I took as many different trumpet lessons as I could. But, it's funny because I also documented everything. I got a stack of practice journals. It's like almost as tall as I am. And I've started going back and looking through those things, and seriously, 99.99% of the stuff I did and practiced, I think made no difference whatsoever. Just like writing down all these exercises. What? I don't even remember doing this,
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean? Like
I spent a lot of time and a lot of chops thinking that I was going to find some exercise that was going to fix me.
Yes. Yes.
Rather than just playing with good fundamentals, basically.
Right.
And the things that really helped me out, even not knowing anything, were exactly what you're talking about. It's kind of hard because, especially when you start out, mouthpiece pressure is the kind of the classic example. You go, oh, if I press this mouthpiece into my face a little bit harder, I can pop up to the next partial. So you think you're being pragmatic, and you're really just kind of screwing yourself over. So the things that worked out for me over the course of a number of years were always the same, and it was physical comfort and how good my sound was on like a G in the staff.
Right.
If I made an adjustment and my G in the staff sounded better, I just decided that it was better. And that worked out for me majorly over the long run, rather than trying to be like, how do I get these high notes to be easier? I always just thought about the high notes as an extension of good playing, basically. And
a good core sound in the lower to medium register,
low C, G in the staff kind of.
I've found the same thing too. It's like, well, I can play high if I do X, Y, and Z, but my lower notes sound horrible.
Yeah.
But I figure it'll get better over time, and it never does.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
I'm doing whatever weird thing to play super high.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that sounds pretty good, but I can't play low, and I can't play from low to high. Yeah. So I've got this weird creature of a high note embouchure where I'm still jamming the horn in my place, but I'm in my face, but I'm getting the notes, but then there is no lower register that sounds pretty at all.
Yeah.
So then I think you just have to, like you said, you got to start from the G or wherever it's comfortable and expand, right? Is that what you're talking about? You just expand from the good core sound and make it sound good.
I think that just helped me to find like a set and just to kind of like believe, that I can do everything from right here. I just have to coordinate it.
And you just need to figure it out and go in both directions, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to think, a big part of it too, for me, actually, was equipment. Was learning about equipment through, not like learning about it scientifically. Like I don't really know about the physics too much, or the acoustics and all this stuff, horn design or any of that. But I always chose equipment that would make what I wanted to do as a musician the easiest, and then practice the opposite on it. So I play a mouthpiece that's by no means super small among like lead trumpet players, but it's probably the equivalent of about a Bach 10.5 E. And I spent the majority of my practice time playing in the low range, pedal range, and figuring out how to do that on what a lot of people would consider a pea shooter mouthpiece. And because I think it requires you to be more efficient, when you, it's like being able to like scream high notes on a big mouthpiece and play big fat low notes on a small mouthpiece. I feel like it does something for you in terms of learning how to kind of back off the horn and take care of things inside of your body and not, there's not, when you're playing a tiny little mouthpiece, you can't do all the weird things that sometimes people try to do to get across different registers. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you set it on there, like it's like grabbing the golf club and then you just whack balls all day long until you
figure it out, right?
Yeah.
It's funny, when you're talking about that little mouthpiece. I've got a mouthpiece visualizer, and I stick it up to my chops and I go, wow, there's very little lip. And no matter what I do here, it's the same. It looks the same pretty much, right? It's like there's such a small vibrating area. It's like, do I really need to overly concern myself with what's going on in that little tiny space, other than, my sound and jaw position and, does it sound good? And it doesn't feel good, like you said.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm always like, what if I set like this? Looks the same. What if I do this? Looks the same. What if I do that? Looks the same. Right. I'm like, what? And then it freed my mind up to think, okay, well, let's just work on a good sound. Yeah. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you said, it's not there is no magic exercise. It's like, I found the golden ticket, right? The golden exercise that's going to make me better, right?
Yeah, or the perfect routine or whatever, like in a method book. It's like, God, how many routines have I tried?
All that being said, during the lockdown, it's like, okay, I'm going to practice 3 hours. I wake up at 6, I practice an hour, I wait, I practice another hour, and after teaching, I practice another hour. My chops have never been more stiff and tired and felt horrible. And I was like, okay, well, this is not working. I need to be a little bit smarter about, I'm practicing your hour, 3 hours, right? It's got to be good, right? Yeah. More practice, more better, right? Not the case, right?
Yeah. Something you reminded me of real quick is I've been playing out of these like beginner Schubrick books.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just the very first exercise where 1, 2, 3, 4. Off to 1, 2, 3, set, and just getting to where you can, you know what I mean, like put it on that 1 second before.
Yeah,
I think that'll grant you a lot of freedom too. It's hard. It's way harder than you think.
Right.
But you kind of like learn, like, oh, it doesn't really matter if I put it exactly where it's supposed to go. If the muscles are trained to go, do whatever they have to do to produce that pitch.
Right. Right. Yeah. I was going to say, I've been doing a lot of breath attacks because I'm really liking the breath attack, because if I can't produce a sound by just blowing air and it goes, I'm like, let's see, if I tongue that note, it might start, but I'm having to, abuse that note to get it to start. But so breath attacks have really helped me get it centered, right? Because do you do a lot of breath attacks in the upper register? You think they'd be helpful? If you can breath attack and get the note to bam.
Yeah. I mean, that's what, the breath attack in my mind is just, like the Philip Farkas book. Yeah. That was helpful for me. The two books that I felt were the most helpful, now these Schubert books are making a lot more sense. But the Farkas book, what's it called? The Art of Brass Playing.
Yeah.
And the Reinhardt, Encyclopedia of the Pivot System.
Right.
Those are the two that kind of helped me the most. But the Farkas book talks about the breath attack. The only thing the tongue does in terms of hitting a note is give it a percussive attack. It lets you do it rhythmically. Bam. But if you can just blow the note, or if you crack the note, the problem isn't with the tongue, it's with the chops, because they're not set correctly for that to produce that frequency. So I think that any note that you can breath attack, you're going to own it.
Right.
You're just going to own it.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that's totally valid.
Because you'll have some students that can only play loud, because what happens, they'll be playing exercise and they start airballing, right? They airball, no sound. So what they do is they play louder and louder and louder until the note comes out and tugging harder. And then they go, okay, that's how you hit it. You blow your brains out and then the note comes out.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And then you were talking about earlier about how, as you were playing, I think with Jay Saunders doing the fifths, that you were actually playing softer as you played higher.
Yeah.
Right. Which is a really weird at first concept to understand, because every band director, well, not every, but will say blow louder to play higher. Yeah. Right. And then you're blowing your aperture apart.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Which is I think one of the most difficult things to do is play high and loud at, when you're learning, because then you're pressing really hard, your aperture's open, and then you got the loud sound. Right. Yeah. But if you practice playing your range softly, you keep your aperture small, you learn how to play, and then you can manipulate and control it. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
So that's always been, and the other issue, that is many trumpet players have is to play or not to play when your chops are tired.
Yeah.
Right. It was even I'm so old. I'm 57. Yeah. So I'm still dealing with, still wanting to practice 3 hours, but my chops are dead, but I'm still going to practice, which is just not smart.
Yeah.
It's not efficient.
Totally.
So what advice would you have? Like, okay, so when you practice, there's always the concept of rest as much as you play. Mm-hmm. So are you resting in between each little exercise? Are you resting? How do you seem like the perfect person to ask for that.
Well, first I'll just say that every time, the number one mistake that I've made time and time again, and every time my chops have gotten totally screwed up, it's because I played on tired chops. And that was like when I moved to LA. When I was in Texas and Los Angeles, I was mostly freelancing more than teaching, and it just got to the point where I had to kind of give up on the freelancing, and I just sort of focused on playing in the bands that I wanted to be in, and got more into the teaching because I felt like it was hurting my playing. And I think there's this idea that, like, if you're like working all the time or something, that you're just going to keep getting better and better and better, and you're like some kind of total pro. You know what I mean? But it's but I don't know. Some people get stronger and stronger, but I always would just get worse and worse. The more tired I would get. So, just recently, I was dealing with some major fatigue issues. So I took, I didn't play for about 2.5 weeks, and came back and felt great. So I think that in terms of practicing, I'm sort of a fan of never getting tired in the practice room.
I love that.
Yeah, because you figure out how it feels to play good when you're not tired. You don't figure out how efficient, really nice feeling trumpet playing when you're totally, beat up in the face.
Right.
So when you figure out how that feels, then you eventually learn how to keep recreating that feeling, and then you can ride it. And then you have really good endurance. You never have to sit around practicing page after page after page after page to build endurance, because you just know how it feels to play easy, and then you just make sure that it keeps feeling like that for as long as you can. So I'm a big fan of taking the day off after a hard gig, if possible. Sometimes even two. If you're just learning how to play, you got to practice, But I think that if you've been playing for a long time, no pro athlete's gonna beat their knees into the ground or something. You know what I mean? Like you're not gonna abuse themselves when they have a job to perform. And once you have the muscle memory, it's not going to go anywhere if you take a couple of days off of playing. But just in terms of at home practicing, something that helped me a lot, I got from the Effortless Mastery, the Kenny Werner book.
Sure.
He talks about, he's talking about piano players, so he's not talking about it so much in terms of physical fatigue, but mental, getting really like, feeling like I have to practice 12 hours a day just to be able to compete and not having fun while you're playing. So the exercises that you just do, like he just has this little thing you do, I don't know, like 5 notes or something. And then after you play everything, you take your hands off the piano and you sit them in your lap. And then you put your hands back on the piano and you try and exercise again. Then you take your hands off the piano. So I took the time to develop the habit of literally setting my trumpet down after I do everything, which when you do it at first is really kind of a pain in the neck. But after you get into it, there's like no other way to play now, in my opinion. So if something's like 4 measures long, some little exercise is 4 measures long, then I played the 4 measures, and then I set my trumpet on the table and I kind of walk around the room for a second and then pick it back up and then try it again that way. So I very rarely play for more than 10 or 15 minutes at a time. And even during that 15 minutes, I'm like maybe playing 2, 3.
Okay. These like, that's awesome, because people don't really, they say practice an hour.
Yeah.
Right. And even some parents hear their kid not practicing they're in the room and they hear a couple notes and then nothing, and then a couple notes and then nothing, and then they get on them. So it's like, oh no, I got to practice the whole hour. So I'm glad you said that. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So let's say you've played for 15 minutes and you've only played very little of that. Yeah. Then do you take a break after that 15 minutes or? Yeah, I do. The way, being like self-employed and working from home and teaching and all this stuff, I just kind of intersperse it throughout whatever else I'm doing. Sneak away and play for 10 minutes, come back and do whatever I got to do. Right. But a lot of the time too, like the practice time, I feel like is more conceptual. Like you play a lip slur, boy, you play boy, and you notice there's a little fuzz on it or something. Right. I don't think you get better by doing it 10,000 times in a row. I think you get better by just noticing that it didn't sound the way you wanted it to. Right. Oh man, that's advanced concepts. Seriously. Yeah, it's like an echo. You know what I mean? I'm like hearing that, like, oh God. Well, I do it too. It's like, and my students, they'll play something, they do it wrong, they do it again, they play it wrong, they do it again, and it's like, and I'm like, wait, stop. Yeah. You're just frying yourself. Totally. And the other thing too, like if this is the other big one that like everybody does. It goes back to the Schubrick thing, you know what I mean? Of like, of doing this is everybody leaves the horn on their face. You know what I mean? They'll go to play a note and they'll frack the note and then they won't take the horn off their face. Right. And somehow think they're going to like learn how to play a clean attack by like, Right. But it's just not going to happen. I don't think anyways. Right. If you just leave it on your face until you get it how you want it, Right. I feel like you'd never get a reliable chops that way. Yeah, definitely. So, what I have them do is like, and myself too, it's just like, okay, stop after that first little disaster. Yeah. And then the second time is a little better. And then they stop, take the horn off of your face. Third time's even better. Off of your face. And then boom. And I'll go, see, right? Yeah. You don't have to pound your face into submission, right? Your chops, right? Yeah. Speaking of pounding your face, you were going on the road with Brian Setzer, right? Yeah. So, which is great because there aren't that many big bands that will go on the road and have the money to hire many musicians to travel. So that's awesome. And I guess you're playing lead in that group.
Yeah,
or maybe toss it around
the first book, but we've always had like three. Everybody in the section plays lead, but we would usually split up the show over. Three of us mainly did it all. I probably played like half of it or something, and then the two guys that were to my right, Sean Billings and Brian Scanlon, were both crazy strong trumpet players, way better high chops than me. So they would do kind of like the screamy double C stuff as well as kind of like some upper register soloing.
Sure.
So we were kind of divvying it up so that we could all survive.
So you're playing, night after night. You're on the road. Yeah. Sleep can be an issue. Fatigue.
Yeah.
I mean, physically, not only your chops.
Yeah.
I'm sure the lead book is demanding.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you have any tips for dealing with that kind of punishment night after night? That kind of, it's very physical. Right.
Yeah.
And I know it's not something you could say in one tip, but maybe if you could just throw out a couple of things, maybe.
Yeah, totally. Well, a lot of it comes back to some of the things we already talked about, like holding the golf club and all that, and just knowing that you can put the horn up to your face and the ear training. So the two big things for me are knowing my set, which is all the embouchure experimentation and like taking the months and months to like fool around with the tooth aperture and the jaw placement and all this stuff, so that you get a feeling for how it feels for you to play, and then the ear training, and then how to breathe. Because what's always helped me in those situations is to play as little as possible outside of the show. So,
that was going to be my other question, like how much playing are you doing other than the gig?
Yeah. There were some tours where every off day I just left my horn in the case, and usually to warm up. I don't know why this works, but when I'm having to play like that all the time live, I just stick a practice mute in and play like a C in the staff as loud as I can, and make the mute rattle. And something about being able to stay open against all that additional back pressure, I feel like it really gets like the blood flow going here, and then I just stop. Because I just that initial amount of, for me, there's like the first like 2 or 3 minutes of playing, where there's that initial tingle and swelling that happens, and then I just kind of set the horn down and then let it subside, and then I feel like I'm ready to play after that. But I feel like a lot of people get into trouble because they don't have the relationship with their playing to have the confidence to just show up and play without feeling like they need an
hour
or something like that.
An hour-long routine. You got to have it done. Otherwise, the show's going to be a disaster kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. I know there's always the guys that I have to get this hour in. Otherwise, I'm calling a sub. Forget it. Yeah. And then there's other guys like, I haven't played in a week. Pull out the horn. It's like, just amazing.
Yeah.
So I think it's exactly what you're talking about. You have to be super familiar with how to get through the gig and how to get the sound you want as fast as possible, and to know your chops and to know your body and your and yourself, and have enough confidence to know that if I do, that I'll get through the gig.
Yeah. But I like just little habits, I think, like like the stamp or Reinhardt thing, like feel the lips touching inside of the mouthpiece before you play.
So when I was younger, I didn't do a lot of stamp, but I'm doing a lot of it now. Talk a little bit about like what you just said, lips touching. I mean, what do you mean by that?
Like, I don't have a visualizer or anything, but one of the things that helped me was just this idea of like the lips are just like when your mouth is closed, the lips are lightly touching.
Right.
So right before you play, even though you breathe through the corner of the mouth, the lips are still lightly touching inside of the rim of the mouthpiece, and they're only open when the air is blowing them into the cup of the mouthpiece.
So the lips are together, like even when you're taking a breath.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not
So
saying everybody does that. A lot of people play
Right.
super open.
Super open. Yeah. I see that.
But like for me, that's just I just mean to say that was an example of something that I could latch onto. And then I'm really big on like this, you know, like the habit thing and just one at a time. Like if you want to get an open breath, then all you do when you practice is every single time you put the horn up to your face, you just think about that breath until it becomes the de facto way that you relate to the horn. And then when you have like 2 or 3 of these things going for you, like, you know, the breath and, you know, the set for me is like touching, then those little tiny physical cues, along with enough practice and time, that's been huge for me just in terms of playing confidence and playing consistency, because I know that no matter how good I feel or how tired I feel or how bad the acoustics are or how whatever is going on, I do the same thing every time. So that's helped me a lot.
I think that's huge. And I don't think a lot of people talk about your consistent practice routine. I'm not talking about exercises at all. I'm talking about the way you set the horn, the way you sit, the angle of your horn, and just being consistent so that if you need to tweak something, you're already coming from a place of a solid foundation. So if you want to tweak a little jaw movement, it's one thing and you're not changing 10 things.
Yeah.
And it's exactly like you're saying about the golf swing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you're holding the golf club maybe, you know, the same way every time. And then maybe you do this with your thumb, right? But everything else is the same. But if you do this and you do this and you do this, I mean, that's too many parameters to adjust.
Yeah.
Too much brain in your game, I think, at that point. Yeah. So adjust one thing. But I really like that idea of you're doing the same thing the same way every day. So there's consistency.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I was geeking out on YouTube and I was watching, somebody posted something of Clark Terry playing. And man, I mean, there's just so little movement when he's playing. You know, he's not moving. He's playing the same way every time. And, you know, Clark's amazing, or was amazing. And it's like there's something to be learned from that experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So are you teaching a lot now? Are you doing a lot of Zoom lessons?
Yeah, mostly just online Zoom stuff. And the ear training thing too was kind of like the first of what I'm calling the trade school, where I like to kind of put together curriculums. So I got a couple of things that I'm working on. And
then you have some others in the pipeline too. I see on your website too. You've got some courses that you're working on, right? Super organized.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like my friend put it the other day. He told me that my head is like a bag of cats, which is why I have to organize everything around me so much.
I think it's, you know, like musicians are that way. We have so many projects going on. I want to do this, and it gets kind of overwhelming, especially now with the 2 kids, right? I don't know how you're doing anything at all.
Yeah.
Let alone practicing.
That's part of the taking 2.5 weeks off.
Right. Let's see. Is there anything else that maybe we didn't cover that you'd like to cover? I'm looking at my cheat sheet here.
I think that's cool. That's a lot of good trumpet stuff.
It's a lot of good trumpet stuff. I learned a lot. Mostly I'm doing these for selfish reasons, just to learn from other trumpet players, and then things I never asked when I was younger because I didn't think about it, or I just figured that people didn't talk about, you know, like embouchure. Like I said, teachers never, ever, ever, ever talked about the embouchure. Yeah. You know, just stick it on your face and make it sound good. Yep. It's like, oh, I wish it were that easy. Like the you know, for example, I was buzzing, right? I was doing some mouthpiece buzzing with my instructor, and then as I'm playing higher, my fingers are riding up the mouthpiece until I'm almost hitting myself in the face. And he goes, "Yeah, you know, when you play higher, don't press harder." I'm like, that's an interesting concept. How would one do that? It's like I had no idea, and it's like, so I just kept doing it, right? And then the rest was just self-discovery and like you said, reading every book I could get my hands on. And then I started asking every trumpet player, "Oh, well, where's your tongue? Where's your jaw? Blah, blah." And most of the answers were, "I don't know. Yeah. Let me think about it."
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, because everybody was, great natural players, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then that gets into the, like, okay, so you're a great natural player, but what happens when the wheels come off?
Yeah.
Right. And you start to get inconsistent. You start cracking a lot of notes. And then it's like, are you going to be able to self-correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel horrible for a lot of people who have had to end their careers just because the wheels started coming off and they were unable to fix it for whatever reason. And then, my heart goes out to them. It's just, man, it's great to be a natural player. What I would give. Yeah. Because it was never natural for me. So, well, great, James, man. I really appreciate you being on the show. And James, so we want to get into Blackwell's trumpetbasics.com. Is there any other place we might be able to find you? Because you still have the YouTube channel. You maybe haven't
a YouTube
posted
channel under the same name. Okay. Yeah, I plan to start doing some stuff again, but it's been a good months or so. I miss the vlogs, man. Yeah, I was talking about that earlier with my wife. I'm like, I should start walking around telling stupid jokes again.
And they all relate to trumpet, right? You could be carrying your kids or like in the stroller and stuff and just talking trumpet, because those, man, I love those. So I just wanted to thank you again, man, for being on the show. And hopefully we'll do this again. And I will have links in the description with all of your info and where to find you. And I also wanted to, real quick, I know I keep talking, but a free lesson from James. You're still offering a free, that's like $100 value right there. So 30-minute free trumpet lessons.
It's a, if you sign up for the email list, it's like, it's right now it comes out the second week of being on the email list. That may change, but it's an invitation for a free 30-minute consultation. And it's basically just, I've got a little worksheet that I like to work through people with and just see if there are some of these little tweaks like we're talking about, like if people have kind of playing too open or they're doing something funny,
right?
Just some little fix like that. But yeah, I enjoyed doing that. I've got to meet a whole heck of a lot of trumpet players.
I bet. Well, that's an invaluable offer there. So everybody should take advantage of that. That's great, James. Yeah. So appreciate that and everything you're contributing to the trumpet community, man. It's awesome.
Right back at you.
And all your courses and whatnot. Wish you the best of luck, man. So thanks for being on the show, and hopefully we'll do it again, because I still feel like we still have another hour and a half to talk about. I know I do. So many questions. All right, man. Take care of yourself, man. Thanks for being on the show.
All righty. Take care. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening to the Jeff Lewis Trumpet Podcast at www.jefflewistrumpet.com.